us, Hump Day is all about looking back so we can look deep, so we can go forward. It's a conversation. We come with our thoughts, we come with our questions, we come with our concerns about, Lord, how in the world do we live out what you've spoken out in your word? And then we gather around that together, and that literally helps us get over the hump in our lives. So many of us have humps that cause us to repeat the same cycles over and over and over again. Hump Day is about breaking those cycles and moving into the new expansive ways of seeing and being that God had in mind for us when he called us to live life and life more abundantly. Hump Day. Hey, so this is a very special Hump Day today. I got the privilege to have brought on not one, not two, but three guests with me today. And so I wanted to have a conversation that was intergenerational. You know, I'm the old guy in the room today, but Christiana Arango is here. Y'all may know Christiana. Christiana heads up the media department at TPC, and Christiana also is leading our Deep End small group. So Christiana is here not only representing herself, but she be talking to people in her demographic all the time. Mm-hmm. Also with us is Carla Haynes here. Carla is actually interning with us this summer. And Carla is the sister of Deborah Haynes Carolina. Y'all might know that name. Deborah is the worship arts leader here at TPC. And Carla is working on her master's degree in divinity at Boston University. And then we've got with us Josiah West. And if you've been around, you know Josiah. You see him in the sound booth. You see him up in the media booth. You will see Josiah in one of the Deep End small groups. You'll see Josiah here during the weekend. You see Josiah everywhere. Josiah is the Swiss Army knife of TPC. This man can do it all. So Josiah is joining in the conversation with us too. And really, we just want to go back and talk about the impact that the last series we just worked our way through. Before we're done with this series, it's critical that we have a slow conversation, not just us in the room, but y'all with us. Please interact with us on this today. But just a slow conversation, because we just worked for the last 8 weeks through a theology for suffering. And I don't think most of us have spent that much time in the Word of God talking about suffering before, and God actually having a plan in our suffering. So I wanted to just kick off the conversation with, after all of those weeks, was there like a big takeaway moment for you? Was there one of the sermons that resonated for you? Or was there like a mic drop moment for you that's kind of like still rippling through your proverbial water, like that really did something to me? So in no particular order, however y'all want to go. And you don't have to get exactly right, but I mean, just from your recollection, I want to hear from y'all what impacted you. And by the way, why don't y'all join us in the chat? Y'all do the same thing. Like, what was the takeaway? What was the message? What was a mic drop moment for you? Where's the Holy Ghost still like pressing on something that got started during the series? So while y'all doing that, we'll hear from Christiana, Carla, and Josiah.
So I would say something that stuck out to me from the finale just this Sunday was when you were saying about how can the world be against us when Jesus himself is praying for our triumph? Yeah. And I think that was like, it gave me like some hope because, if he's praying for our triumph, like no matter how bad things seem or how deep you feel like you've fallen, like he's still rooting for you. Yeah. So it just is a reminder that like God doesn't give up on us. We can never do something so wrong where God's like, I'm done. Like they're not worth, they're not worth it anymore. Like that moment will never come, even when I feel like that about myself. Yeah. No, so that good. Like stuck with me a lot.
That's so good. That's so good. And that was the last word in the series. I think so often when we go through adversity, when we go through pain, I think sometimes one of the first places we go is like, God, are you against me? Or God, why'd you let this happen? So I think that's a good piece to take. Like, whenever we're experiencing pain, suffering, adversity, betrayal, or any of the things we walk through, just for us to know that out of all these folk, Jesus is for you. You know what I mean? Like, I think, like you said, that's a good mic drop.
I would say, I say the same thing as Christiana as far as the last sermon.
Okay.
But I do want to, the second sermon that stood out to me was the first, the simply the introduction that there is pain in the plan.
Yeah, man.
That right there told me, like, okay, there's going to be ups and downs. He planned for all of that. And then the last sermon spoke to me and told me that he made himself inseparable from us, so that even though there's pain in the plan, like he basically accounted for that, and he provides, he gave us provision for that, and it's him. Like, so, okay, boom, the first is going to be some pain.
Wait. And the provision is what?
It's him
himself. Man, like, that's a whole series right there, right? Yeah.
So, yes, the first and the last sermons was nice. What tied everything up and what really stood out to me. The opening and then boom, that closing.
That's so good.
I think in the forgiveness sermon, what stuck out to me was like the getting stuck in victimhood.
Yeah.
I think that was the part that kind of was a mic drop where I was just like, oh, I didn't know that I am stuck there. Like, yes, feelings are valid. Yes, of course. And then there was somewhere else that you said, you know, feelings are valid, but they're not always reliable.
Yeah.
And so
feelings are real, but they're not always reliable. Yeah.
Yes. So
that was a good one.
I love that.
I think so often in our Christian experience, I don't know about y'all, but I grew up in a Christian experience. Firstly, that was like really Reformed theology, and Reformed theology kind of has puts a real heavy emphasis on predestination, predetermination, that kind of thing. So it almost would have made me feel like, well, what does it even matter sometimes, because God's going to do what God's going to do anyway. And then I was on another extreme that was really word of faith leaning. And in that context, you never paid attention to your feelings. Your feelings didn't matter. Only what God said mattered. Only what God intends matters. So you can waste your time in your feelings, but you got to have your faith over your feelings. And those two messages kind of sometimes made me lose what I think you got back in touch with, you know, like what I'm really feeling, what I'm really experiencing, what's really happening with me, you know. Feelings are real. And God knows he didn't give them to us after the fall. Feelings aren't a result of the sin of mankind. They're a result of the design of God. So I'll cut you off. Keep going.
It's okay.
I'm a bad host.
You're a pastor. But yes, to that point as well, it's like, if the feelings weren't real, then we wouldn't need Christ as an empathizer, as the greatest priest. You know what I mean? High priest. So it's just like, yes, they're real. Yes, at one point something might have happened to me.
Yeah.
And there's more after that. So I think the more and the plan is kind of where I would always kind of just like brush that off.
Yeah.
And I would just stick in that victimhood. But I think that was in the forgiveness part, it was just, you know, everything.
I think what Carla's saying is something that we all need to pick up on as like a major thread in the series. Because sometimes we're like of the mind, God, where are you? God, how could you have allowed this? God, don't you care? And the reality of it is, we learn in Joseph's life that God knew exactly what was coming his way. That was very painful for a lot of people in our church on week one. I mean, some of the conversations that were in the peace cell were like people like almost disagreeing with even what they had saw in the scriptures, what they heard me saying, because they just couldn't wrap their mind around some of the horrific things that have happened in their lives, that God actually allowed that. He didn't author it, because he has none of that to give us, if you will, but he allowed some of those things. And when I think about Joseph's life, I would love to hear y'all thoughts. There was three things that we did in that first sermon. That first sermon was pits, dreams, and tunics. That's like the heart of Joseph's life in the beginning, that he was having these dreams. that he had this special tunic his father gave him,
Mm-hmm.
and that his brothers threw him in a pit. And I don't know if y'all remember, but in that first week, I was pointing out the fact that God was there in Dothan. He's omnipresent. When Joseph's brothers are scheming and plotting, he literally has a guy providentially bump into Joseph when he's like searching in the middle of nowhere for his brothers, bumps into a guy who's like, yeah, I saw your brothers. I know where they are. They went that way in Dothan. Like, to me, that's God like saying, not only did I knew, I helped him get there. You know what I mean? Like, and then he gets there and falls right into the plot. I know this wrecks our theology, but God is sovereign. He's providentially everywhere in every bit of our path. And he's the God of love. He's the God that's kind. He's the God that's patient. But yet he uses traumas, tragedies, excruciating transitions in our lives, and doesn't put the same weight on them that we do, because he's watching us from an eternal perspective. He knows he's the all-sufficient one. His dreams transcend even the ones we have for ourselves when it feels like it got crushed. And maybe this doesn't sound like it should go be tagged on the end of this, and he's good. You know what I mean? Like, and he's good. He just didn't always define good the way we would. You know what I mean? Because as far as Joe's like, what would be good is to leave me right here with my dad. Let me wear my tunic, inherit this family business, run this whole thing, and show everybody who went to high school with me that it worked out for me. You know what I mean? And instead it's like, no, you going to Egypt, you getting there as an enslaved person, and ultimately I'm gonna get you where I need you to be though, and you're gonna be prime minister. Like, but to me, does that not make you think about your tragedies different? Does that not make it like what Carlos said, where you can actually, prayerfully, I want us to get to the place we can see through some of the horrific stuff that's happened and know that like there's something beautiful that God has planned on the other side. But it's important that we interact with God and ourselves and what happened in a healthy way. Like, what y'all? I know I just said a whole bunch, but like unpack that with me.
I'm sorry if anybody wanted to go first. I would say what that does to me, like that realization that, like you said, God is sovereign and that He uses foolish things to get us to where we need to be.
Come on, man.
That realization, that it's like a hard truth that knocks me out of my natural state, my human mindset, to where He wants me to be in that secret place. So now it's like, it completely changes how I look at life. Because now that I know that this life here, we gonna have trouble. We gonna run into some things. We gonna have some hard truths and some situations that we have to deal with. But I don't look at those things the same way. Because of where He knocked me to. Like,
it's good.
Not where, I mean, I surrendered and I'm following. No, like He had to knock me to this spot where I'm looking at, okay, this trouble now it don't affect me the same way. Now I'm looking at it as a helper more than I am.
And that's crazy, but that's good theology. That's literally what Romans 8 is saying. And we know, and all things work together for the good to them that love God. Sometimes we stop loving God though during this stuff. It's like, God, I don't really trust you no more. But He never stops loving us, right? And to them that are called according to His purpose, like, God, I wasn't really called to your purpose. I wanted you to help me with my purpose, but what's your purpose? You know what I mean? But your point is right. Like, you can look at every ingredient. If God help us to look at every ingredient in a way that we trust you and it's working towards something beautiful in His plan.
And at times that can seem like the ideal way to kind of see God and see our relationship to our pain. But I think what was to that point, you had said like talking about rejoicing and just the fact that you have to like rehearse it over and over again. And it's not like, my initial thought is not to be like, oh, well, there's the sovereignty of God. That's
right. That's not what I'm thinking.
That's not my first thought. And it might, exactly, or my second. But to rehearse the fact that, you know, God is sovereign. I'm not a victim. You know, He is good. You know, that's the kind of thing that as long as I can rehearse it, I know that I'm gonna see the good that he sees.
That's so good. You took me to that message. Like I was talking about in learning to live kept lives, that we literally do have to learn how to live kept, because we're so accustomed to living in the delusion that we can actually keep ourselves. You know what I mean? Like I know how to keep me, and I need you to help me on the stuff I can't keep. But the reality is we don't. And this is what Paul is writing to the church in Thessalonica when he says in 1 Thessalonians 5, like around 18, rejoice evermore, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, you know, and the rejoice is not like, you know, like, hey, I'm loving this. The rejoice is like rejoin, you know, reconnect, return, you know, go deep with me, rejoice, you know. Joy is like two very distinct things coming together and producing something they never could have on their own. So I pray that becomes a reflex for us, that, you know, maybe it's not our first thought, but at least we don't languish in the pain, and we get to the place like, God, even though I hate what has happened or what is happening or where I find myself now, I'm not even gonna pretend like I love it. My feelings are real. But I'm returning to you. I'm not going to stay stuck in myself. I'm not going to stay stuck in the circumstance. I'm going to rejoice. I'm going to pray. I'm going to reopen my communication with you. And I'm going to look for where you were in this thing. In everything, I'm going to give thanks. I want to try to find out where you are in this thing. And if we can just get to that heart posture, we don't have to live in that bad neighborhood of victimhood, which is, victimhood tries to give you a new identity. That's when you let what happened to you redefine you. That's what victimhood does. You know what I mean? Like, we then start seeing our lives in light of that. And that becomes the reason why all this happened. And it would have been this for me if this, you know, you heard it before. We've all said this kind of stuff to ourselves before, you know.
Yep. I felt like I was comfortable on the pillow of altars and memorials, like remembering what I already went through the right way. And I'm good with that. And then this series is like current. Like what you're going through right now. So I got the past stuff. Now I'm just trying to put into practice everything, because you gave us all the tools pretty much and the instructions on how to go to God and all those things in the moment. So now I'm just trying to, like, personally get comfortable on that pillow and, like, put it into action. Because I can be stubborn when it comes to that.
What do you mean? Because I'm sure other people watching can relate to that.
Like, when you're in the middle of going to something, like being stubborn with going to God. Like, I know I should go to God. Like, I know that I can get my well filled at God's feet. But because I'm currently going through something, it's almost like a childlike stubbornness. Like, you know, if your dad punishes you when you're a kid and you're like, I'm not talking to you for a week. Like that type of feeling. Like, I struggle with that. Like, just being stubborn and, like, just going to him and just being like, here, like, what do I need to learn from this?
Got you. No, that's good for you to see yourself. I'm not saying it's good to have slow reflexes, but to see yourself. And maybe most of us just wouldn't be as honest. You know what I mean? We just wouldn't be quite that honest. I know I often, sometimes we always want a explanation for our pain. You know what I mean? Like, whose fault was this? What can I do to make sure this never happens again? You know, and the truth be told, like, all of our pain doesn't have logic to work with it. You know what I mean? That was when I got into that. You can't logically sort out and understand and make everything you experience just work perfectly. You know what I mean? Like, some stuff is just horrific, and there ain't no explaining to it. And that was when I was trying to use that picture of God being the supernatural air traffic controller. Like, he's working on more than just us. He's working on accomplishing multiple agendas and multiple people's lives at the same time. And, you know, it makes me think about when Joseph was in jail. Like, all them boys needed to do was go tell Pharaoh, like, they knew firsthand the most powerful one in the whole nation. They could have left that day they got out, been like, this dude interpreted the dreams. Least we could do is let Pharaoh know he's in prison. And it could have changed the course of his life. Some of us can never get over that kind of stuff. And Joseph doesn't get out when he wants to get out, but there's a reason. God is literally working on divine timing. Truth be told, in my life, it hasn't always worked out that clean. There's still stuff that is like suspended in the I don't know column. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I need to rest in the but I trust that you love me column.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Can I on the pain topic, like we was talking about making sense of it.
Yeah.
I used to try to make sense of the situations that I went through and that I'm currently in right now. And that would often lead me to putting myself in a hole, like trying to understand and wrap my head around that type of stuff. What has been helping me now is simply not being so selfish with the pain, basically. Like, I'm not in pain just for my benefit. My pain is for another person's benefit also.
Yeah.
So now with the situations that don't make sense to me, my mindset is on that now. Okay, this not making no sense to me. This pain must be for me to help or to give to somebody else, if that's making sense. That helps me make sense of the horrific stuff.
Yeah.
Cause like, why would you let this happen?
Yeah.
If not for me to, okay, be in that same place, and then once I meet somebody that also been there, to help them get through that situation the same way you did the same thing for me, if that's making sense.
Yeah. Do y'all find yourselves trying to ignore your pain, stuff your pain, just try to have enough successes that I don't ever need to deal with my pain? And if so, do you feel like this series gave you some courage to go do the work of trying to process through some of your pain? And I'm gonna just tell you why. Hold that thought. Has this series encouraged you? And I'm asking y'all too, has this series encouraged you to try to process through some of your pain? Because when we don't, we literally start to have it's another type of victimhood. We literally start to be changed by what happened, but forget, since we're working at doing that so hard, what happened. But now we react to certain circumstances differently. We react to God differently. We've got pat responses for stuff rather than going to prayer because we never process through it, but we never want to go through it again. Like, so how are y'all? Like, I know for me, when I was in the season of life y'all are in, and truth be told, this happened in any season. This ain't an age thing, but I just can remember myself with y'all. I used to think if I made enough money, had enough success, got a fly enough wife, fast enough car, I was shallow. Don't be judging me. And got a big enough house. It don't matter. Don't even matter what I went through because I thought that was the end all be all. And truth be told, I ended up getting a lot of that stuff. And it blew my mind that it had no therapeutic help for me. You know what I mean? I couldn't get enough. I had to go back and work through. Like, did this series, you talked about it gave you some tools, but do you feel like it gave you some courage and confidence to go back? Or do y'all find yourself still like I was in my 20s, maybe early 30s, maybe by mid 30s, I was out of that. I hope y'all get there sooner if I shepherd and love you well. But what would y'all say to that?
Well, the big theme that I took home overall for myself is like I just need to go back to the source because like what you were saying, he's the only thing that can give us what we need to do all these things. So like I already told you, I bought myself a brand new Bible. Yeah. And I brought custom tabs and custom sticky notes and
knew you were serious
highlighters
when you showed me this stuff.
Because my plan is to really dive back in just one-on-one with God himself so I can start to do the things that I learned from this series.
Yeah.
I love to hear it.
No, she got serious.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it.
No more games.
This series, that was your question. What has this series done for you, like as far as the pain? I would say for me personally, it helped me lean into it even more and not ignore it as much or try to put it to the back seat. It helped me understand that it's here for a reason. So while it's here, let me get what I'm supposed to get from it and out of it. Yeah. I can't ignore it because if I ignore it, then I'm just hurting. But if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, acknowledging it and getting what I need to get from it, then okay, it served its purpose. And now once it served its purpose, I know he gonna remove it once it serves its purpose. So it helped me.
If I'm honest, I literally in this series feel like I didn't even give us tools as much as I feel like God was like giving us awareness. I'm sure some tools happening everywhere, but like awareness that, it's real. It wasn't necessarily just because you did something wrong or you sinned or you invited this into your life. Even if you did do everything perfect, which you can't, they still might crucify you because they did Jesus. He never did anything out of the will of God. He was God. He never did anything to anybody that was motivated by anything other than love. He never carried unforgiveness. He never carried bitterness. He never carried vengeance. He never acted out of his flesh, not one time. He says we have a high priest that was touched with all of the feelings of our infirmities, yet without sin. And what they gave him for a perfect life was the worst betrayal, the worst pit, the deepest pit of any human being ever been in. And they crucified him, the vilest, most violent, most for low class, disgusting, reprobate people kind of death. It wasn't even a noble death. It was a shameful death that they gave him. And I'm mentioning that because the answer ain't, if you live in this world free of all of that, you won't be touched by this world. The answer literally is, how do we deal with the fact that this world's going to touch us? And I thought that was all that really happened this year. I'm super encouraged to hear from y'all. If y'all want to encourage, I'll take it. Super encouraged by that. But I feel like the next series is when we finally like here's how you work. Here's how we work to be healed. It's actually going to be called, the staff confirmed this to me today, like overcoming wounds of the heart. Like that, we become archaeologists of our lives. And maybe in some cases, generational archaeologists. Because some wounds got handed to us. Our families taught us how to respond to stuff. We learned from watching them how you should deal with it. You know what I mean? And then we went forward. I told y'all, like my dad, let me just say this before I talk about the bad part of my dad. My dad taught me faith that is like nobody else I've ever met. Like my dad, we could have the whole roof blow off our house and my dad would be like, this is perfect. We could get suntans and don't have to spend no money on no vacations. This is beautiful. We're in touch with nature now. We're like, Dad, the roof's off now. But I mean, he had faith and optimism. Like that was a great gift he gave me. It helped me learn to be resilient and resolved and to face adversity and not be shook. But on the other side, early in his life, he dealt with every difficulty by trying to go to Fantasy Island. Rather than stay in the reality of it, he would get drunk and go off to Fantasy Island. And I learned that. So while I didn't become an alcoholic, I most certainly learned best thing to do is escape it. Just because I didn't learn any tools. So I'm just saying our families have handed us stuff. And some of the stuff we got to work beyond where they stopped the work, And talk to me about that. Like, talk to me about pain you feel like you inherited. If y'all are ready, maybe y'all still living at home. You can't do it. You might not have a place to stay tonight, but but I always will help y'all out with one hotel night up the street. After that, you can trust God. No, but this is tape. But is there? Do you feel like there's some stuff you inherited that you now realize, like, hey, that wasn't healthy? They're probably still working through that themselves. Y'all want to go there, or y'all want to skip that? Yeah, and y'all could say the same.
Okay. Can you give me the question again?
Yeah. Like some pain was secondhand smoke pain.
Yes.
Some pain that we experience in our lives is because we inherited not learning how to rejoice evermore, not learning how to pray without ceasing, not learning how in everything give thanks. Sometimes we inherited habits and hang-ups, and we didn't even know they were habits and hang-ups, like how we respond. Yeah.
I'll say something.
Carla.
Yes. No. I think there are a lot of like cultural reasons why this was handed to me. because I don't know if anybody knows I'm first gen American,
Yeah.
and I think I was kind of handed like to have to prove a lot of like my success, or like prove, that I belong in these rooms, or, you know what I mean, or in school or whatever. And I think that's caused a lot of pain for me when I felt less than. You know what I mean? And it's just like, people did all kinds of stuff and said all kinds of stuff that would make me feel like, okay, now I have to work 10 times harder. I have to have an answer. And just that like reaction, like you were talking about earlier, that would end up, hurting people, because I'm insecure, and I have this expectation to kind of like do it perfectly. But yeah, I was kind of handed that, and I think my reactions to things, my reaction to, fear of failure and things like that, ended up being like a pain that I have to sit with now. I mean, like your messages did give that courage to like sit with it and notice it's not a monster that I need to tame. This is something that I sit with, that I can, talk to and reduce in a way.
So,
Okay. I would say a habit that I picked up from from my father. Great man, great guy.
absolutely.
Love that
Absolutely.
dude. But one thing I say I picked up from him was not asking for help, like when stuff is going on. Like that habit right there, I had that for a long time, and it's not like he spoke that or taught that into me. It's just what I seen him doing.
Yeah.
Like I seen how he handles situations, and I'm watching him growing up, and him just being a man. Like he wasn't opening up, at least not nowhere near around me. I never seen him ask for help before. He always bore that weight on himself.
Yeah.
So watching him doing that, growing up watching him doing that, it kind of taught me to do it too. And I was doing it for some years, and it was bad. It was bad not just being alone, isolated with your trouble.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
No, you got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's a big one. I know Deborah don't need us giving no answers for us, but Deborah will admittedly tell you that her tendency will be to like draw back. You know what I mean? Like when she's in pain or go, like her tendency would be to draw back. And I think she probably doesn't go to the fact that she can tell us that she doesn't go to isolation. But I think a lot of times when we get hurt like that, and particularly men, our tendency can be to isolate. We feel like men aren't supposed to show their emotions.
Yeah.
Men aren't supposed to feel any emotions. Men shouldn't be stuck in emotions. So a lot of times it's a mask that a lot of us wear as men. So for men to even admit the fact that they're experiencing pain is something. You know what I mean? And we've seen a lot of examples of toxic masculinity that is not helpful. You know what I mean? And Jesus was a man. Matter of fact, Jesus is the ultimate man's man. But there's one verse in Scripture, the shortest verse in Scripture says Jesus wept. It's the shortest verse in all Scripture. But he's the most masculine man you're ever gonna meet. He's the prototype for manhood. Jesus wept. And so that just tells me he's in touch with others' emotion, because that's what he was weeping over, and he's in touch with his own emotion. I would ask y'all tonight, if you just type in the chat, can you think of secondhand smoke kind of pain that you've inherited in your life because of coping mechanisms, because of pains that your parents felt that they ended up passing their unforgiveness or their bitterness onto you? And while you're thinking about that, I want to say this. God picks our parents. And he knows where he's placing us. You know what I mean? Like, Christiana, you could have been my daughter. But God was like, nope, I know exactly who I want to be her dad, exactly the man to put. And we need to think about that. because it helped. Like y'all have heard me kind of like talk about my dad. And the one thing I didn't talk about though is like my biological dad was never in my life. But by the grace of God, I'm not the person that says I grew up without a father, because when I'm 2 years old, my father married my mother and legally adopted me, and I had his last name. I was 8 before I even knew that this was my adopted dad. And I was eventually going to figure it out because he was like 5'4", and I'm 6'1". So eventually I've been like, what is going on here? You're 5'2", you're 5'4", I'm 6'1" up in here. But you know, but the things I learned there that were painful and hurtful, that forced the dependence on Christ. But there's things that I also learned there that are strengths in my life. Like God picked my parents, like the community I grew up in, the time in human history, the ethnicity I am. All of that was picked by God. He's like, in order to accomplish this, Pan, I need this womb. For like, we need to think about that. You know what I mean? So, and that's a Rubik's Cube for us to be praying through. How's that hit you? Because some people are like, probably infuriated right now that I said that. Like, you have no idea what kind of pain was caused to me in the home I grew up in. And God wants to work that together in a way that causes you to be able to comfort others with the comfort that he comforts you with, kind of getting to what you said. And it literally becomes your contribution to the human family for you to work out your salvation. And like, that's how God works, you know? I'm like, I want a platform. He's like, no, I'm giving you a ministry in the lives of other people, you know?
It just makes me feel excited to become the person that he intends for me to be. Yeah. Because all the ingredients are already in the bowl. It's like, I just need to put myself in the oven. So,
I like that in the oven.
I'm cooking.
Good cooking illustration.
I was gonna say the opposite. That's horrifying. Wow. It's like you got us like thinking existential. Like I mean, but I think something about the way I got to this world is actually like it's so stressful because not gonna put my mom's business out there, but she was not supposed to have me or be able to even conceive me. So, and I am like, I have a sister who's 15 years older than me. Yeah. Deborah's 4 years older than me. Complete surprise. Born in the year that, you know, the world was supposed to end, 2000. But, you know, it's just Y2K, like, right? Yeah, so it was just like, what was I doing here? You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things where I'm like, all right. And I'm also like Gen Z. Like, it's not an ideal situation.
Or not apparently.
Not apparently.
An ideal situation.
Yes.
Right?
So thank you for correcting that.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, the way Christiana put it now, I'm thinking maybe I'm just.
Yeah. It's work we got to do. It's healing we got to experience. It's being reconciled back to God that we have to experience. Like we're literally like the box on Christmas that the parents didn't feel like putting it together, and they're like, there it is, but we got to put it together. You know, like our lives are literally that. Like you say, you know, it's all there. Assembly required. You know what I mean? By the master. Sometimes we put it together and we ride on a unicycle out here, and he was like, no, that was like a tricycle. Like, that's not supposed to be what you're doing with that. You making it work. You making it work, but that ain't how it's supposed to work. And but yo, we could do this all night. And but this was a super special hump day for me. Like, I would love for us to do some more of this. And I always love being in a peace cell with y'all anyway. Two quick things. If you're not in a peace cell, you just got a glimpse for what a peace cell really looks like. If you're not in the deep end peace cell, you got a glimpse for the energy and the excitement and the realness that is in a deep end peace cell. So I just want to encourage you. You know, God didn't create us for isolation. He created us for community, and working out your salvation is a team sport. So just want to encourage you to get a crew, get some people, and we've kind of set that up. And pray this hump day was helpful. Put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get back to them. Love you. Bless you. Bye.